Wendy. Well, welcome everybody. For those of you who have attended my other sessions, welcome back. I tend to have a lot of you that will come back over and over to all my different talks. And for those of you who are new, I'm glad you joined us. So today we're going to discuss an effective process for identifying and managing risks so that we can avoid, or hopefully possibly avoid, or at least better anticipate those annoying and pesky problems that do affect us on our projects. You'll see on this slide that we do have a handout that goes along with this presentation. We don't hand out slides, but we do have something better. It's a one-page handout that includes everything on the slides. It's got all the key information. You can download that. It will give you not only the information from this presentation, but also a risk template that we're going to discuss and go through, and just a 3-page white paper outlining a good risk process. And okay, so what? I thought this was going to be 2 different questions, but let's start with the first one. What risks? I want all of you to chat in. If you would, I'm going to monitor the chat box. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I'd like you to send that through the chat box. If you have any questions you want me to answer, if you could please put that into the Q&A box. Because if you put it in the chat box, I'm afraid that question is going to scroll off the screen and I'm going to lose it. If you don't have the chat box open, look at the bottom of your screen. There's a little blue round bubble. It looks like a thought bubble. That you can click that and get the chat box. So let me ask you guys, this is going to be a very interactive session. So let me ask all of you, what risks have occurred recently on your project? What are some of the risks that have occurred? What stands out in your mind that cause problems on your project? We talk about these pesky problems. What have they been for you? All right, scope that was not well defined. All right, good. The vendor dropping the ball. Yeah, vendors that don't come through. We got scope and we have vendors. Any other risks? I mean, I know you guys have had pain points on your projects. And if you can't find the chat box, you can put it in the Q&A. Poor communication, okay. Resources that aren't qualified to do the project, good. Unqualified resources. Resources skills mismatch, okay, yeah. So either with resources, there's not having enough resources or not having the right resources, right? There's a whole world of problems right there. So not full planning, so you didn't have full, complete planning, budget constraints, client-staff conflict, yes. Those darn customers, they're so demanding, right? But they can be a problem sometimes. Funding, delays in vendor materials, budget not available, good. Let's see. Budget not called out correctly, so budget not, you didn't have proper budget. The SMEs not being available when they were needed. That's always a problem because typically we're not working full-time on our projects. The sponsor's not fully involved, other competing projects. Management reduces or eliminates contingency funds. Yeah, they think of contingency as padding, and unfortunately some people use it that way, but it's not. It's legitimate. We're actually going to talk about that later on. We'll calculate some contingency and show how to justify that. Lack of management leadership, business disruption, delay in vendor materials. Good. The right resource is not always the best resource. Good. Can't see the bottom of that one, but okay. I can't see the end of that. It says the right resource is not the best you, and I can't read the rest of that, unfortunately. Management not being able to make the decisions that are needed. Yeah, the Scrum Master doesn't take risks seriously. Yeah, there was a good talk yesterday about, we're agile and it's chaos. And there was a good discussion there about risk and bringing risks in. So if you're a premium member, you can go download that. That was interesting. Lack of management leadership. Good. Management, not being able to make decisions. Good. So there are a number of good risks that you have all identified, right? These risks have happened to us on our projects. Now, could they have been managed better? Could they have been better anticipated or better managed? And if you think so, how? what could your yes, I love this. Yes. Okay. So what could your organization do or your project teams do you think, to better manage these risks? How could you have better anticipated them? Is there anything that comes to mind? I mean, that's really readily obvious? Because, I mean, clearly that's why we're here today. So I'm going to discuss all of this, but is there something that you just frustrated you during your project? You were like, I knew if we did this, it would be better. We needed to do better discovery. Okay, good. Better upfront planning with all the SMEs in the same room. That helps. Okay, so let's see. So we're not getting a whole lot of, here's the Q&A. Now I can do technology doesn't work as advertised, executive mandated budget, better project governance. Okay, so you could have better project governance, brainstorming the project idea and solution, not ignoring the risks that were identified. That would be good. Get agreement on the same goals. Okay, good. Good. So we've got some early answers. Include everyone. So stakeholder management is key to our projects, right? We need to spend a little bit of time up front to truly identify all those stakeholders and the level at which they need to be involved on our projects. And that's so easily overlooked, and it sounds so simple. We're like, oh, of course I know who the stakeholders are, but not really, right? Too many times we get bit later on. We get in trouble because we didn't include the right people or we didn't include them early enough. All right, train people to identify risk. Well, and you can share the handout from today to maybe help train and discuss risks. Maybe this will help open up that discussion within your organization. All right, good. Now, I don't know how scientifically this was calculated, but some experts estimate that with proper risk management, you can decrease the problems on your project by 90%. Okay, I'm going to say that again because it's a really big number, right? Some experts estimate that with proper risk management, you can decrease the problems and surprises on your project by 90%. Now, what they say is that only 10% of items are truly a surprise. We should be able to anticipate 90% of the stuff that happens on our projects. Now, if I were to ask you now to think back to your past projects, could you have anticipated all that stuff that happened? Oh, good. I believe that wholeheartedly. Excellent. Could your team have anticipated 90% of the stuff that happened? And based on all the risks that you all have written in, they all should be identifiable and anticipatable. Is that a word? They should be able to be anticipated. All right, so that's a number to think about, and maybe a way to discuss risks within your organization if they don't want to address risk, that you can decrease the problems on your project by 90% by doing that. All right, so let's talk about some key concepts of risks and get into more detailed examples of how to manage these and how to better manage these. So some key concepts are with risk management, we're going to include risks that are not addressed elsewhere. And if something is definitely going to happen, if you know that you have a 100% chance of having scope creep, you're going to build into the plan as much as you can to not have scope creep occur, right? You're going to have a well-defined work breakdown structure, and you're going to have meetings to define scope well. Maybe you do an is-not table, which is a favorite of mine, or maybe you do some other things, and you're going to document, and you're going to get sign-off on the scope that is defined. And you're going to put a good change control process into place and make sure everyone understands it. But even after doing all that, there's still the risk that you'll have scope creep, right? I mean, it's insidious. It is hard to detect, and it's always there. And it happens because of well-meaning team members, right? The people you have that always go above and beyond or always give